At number 18 on the iconic 100 is the Joe Montana 1981 Topps rookie card. And here to talk with us today about this card is David Ratliff, signed and slabbed on Instagram. David, number 18, where did you have this card on your list?
So I have this card as top 10. And to me, the Montana rookie is honestly, it's probably the most recognizable football card in my opinion.
Interesting.
Because this is someone that crosses eras, right? So even your older while 81's not quite vintage, it's at the back end, let's say, of that range. And I think collectors of all ages and any NFL collector, but I mean, this is a card that you're aware of. When you see it, you instantly know what it is. And even people that are not necessarily hardcore collectors, or for instance, even basketball guys, they know what this card is. So it's very iconic. To me, it's a top 10 card. A little lower on the list than I would have thought, but I mean, top 20 could be certainly high up there, right?
Yeah, I think that this is a really this is a range that's really tough. As I look at this era, really everything from around 15 to 25, you could really move them around. And in terms of how people rank them, they are really pretty close. So I think there's going to be a lot of arguments in this area. The 150 people who we had fill out the survey, in the end, they've got it at number 18. And I think I feel pretty good about it. I agree with you. It's if it's not the most recognizable football card, it's right there with a couple of other big ones. But in particular, this era of the early 80s, really throughout like the mid 80s, it's an era where some of the it's kind of like the golden era of some football cards. When we were growing up, when I was growing up, you think about the greats, you think about, guys like Jerry Rice, guys like Joe Montana, guys like Steve Young, and they're all in this, they're all in this era, and they're all guys that we're going to see sort of as we go throughout the whole of the top 100. We've seen some of them, we're going to see some of the other guys, but Montana's really, he's toward the top of that list because he's the quarterback from the team, right? Number of Super Bowls until we got Tom Brady, he was the guy. And so I'm with you. When I was younger, I thought about this really being like the football card.
Yeah, when I first started kind of collecting football cards in the, sort of late 80s, early 90s, it was that the Montana rookie was always one where you just keep coming back to it. And it's like, I can't really have a collection even as a kid at that time without it. Right. And he was also, from the free agent move from San Francisco over to Kansas City, kind of putting him back in the spotlight again and making a run in the playoffs. Like, Joe Cool, he was cemented even in the hobby at that time, because they're just, how many guys had won 4 Super Bowls at that point? It's a really, really short list, folks. We talk about Brady all the time, but also knowing that, Brady's all-time favorite player being Joe Montana, to me, just adds to the lore of it, and adds to its pedigree in the hobby for sure.
I think, I really do feel good about this ranking. I wondered if it would be ahead of the Rice, and it is. We've already had the Rice, and we've already had other great football cards like the Walter Payton. Those are, to me, sort of that like most iconic football card group, and I'm with you. I think the Montana is right there. The other thing I want to add is there's not a lot of PSA 10s of this card. And
you'll hear me and other people talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
With the amount of money that is being spent on some of the cards today, and certainly the dollar values that are out there, around a lot of the prospects, right? I mean, gang, if you are a serious football collector and you are spending five figures on current day quarterback RPAs, like, you really should do a little research, go back and just think about where Joe Montana is still going to finish in his legacy within the NFL. Because if it wasn't for Tom Brady, we would still be talking about him as literally the greatest ever, probably.
That's right. Yeah.
So, it's that card in a PSA 10. It's not a unicorn, but when you think about significant cards and the quarterbacks ever, I think it's one that's got to be on your list. It's certainly on mine. I don't own a 10. I've owned a lot of 8s and 9s. I don't own a 10 yet. It's my number one, oldish, not quite vintage football card that I've been looking for. So I will eventually get one.
Awesome. Really great perspective. The other thing that I point out, and I know this is near and dear to your heart, the other way that people have begun to collect this card a lot over the last, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, we're seeing more and more that are being signed and
Yes.
slabbed, signed and
Yes.
slabbed. And I think, if I was a Montana guy, I'm not a football guy, but if I was a Montana guy, to me, owning an 8 in this card that had been signed and just
Yes.
nice blue ink, just
Yes.
right across the middle, centered well. That's a great way to go.
Yes, and it's a really, I love the autograph rookie cards, and it gives you an option to collect some of these iconic cards in a way with the autographs on them that adds a value to it, adds an aesthetic to it, but you can do it on a somewhat more reasonable budget than a 5, or I mean, that Montana 10 is approaching 6 figures now.
Yeah.
So it's a big card. But no, I agree with you. An autographed Joe Montana rookie is really a staple in any kind of football autograph collection, I think.
You mentioned the 6 figures. I just want to hit that real quick because the Jordan rookie is obviously still to come on the countdown, and we know it's going to be really toward the very top of the list. But this is in a lot of ways the Jordan rookie of football.
And football, yes.
It's not as high on the list, and I think for good reason. But there are so many fewer of this card in a high grade than there are of the Jordan, and it speaks to how sensitive the set was, centering issues, and some of those other things. If I was a football collector, I see where you're coming from on this. Again, David, fantastic perspective. Tomorrow we will be back with card number 17 on the Iconic 100. And until next time, happy collecting.